All right. I'd like to welcome everybody who came out to downtown Phoenix this afternoon, brave the heat, brave the traffic, brave the parking. But we have about 100 or so people who registered online. We've got quite a few online. We're hoping that more show up. We're grateful for those who have come here in person to talk about this very important topic. What we're here to discuss is the zoning code update for Maricopa County. One of the clarifications we want to make right off the bat, since I've got members here from Queen Creek, this is unincorporated Maricopa County. This is the zoning ordinance for unincorporated Maricopa County. So what we discuss here are only talking about those rural areas of the county islands that exist within the corporate limits of the surrounding communities, and those ones that are on the periphery in those growth areas within the planning areas of some of the municipalities. This is a very exciting opportunity of what we've got going on here. The project itself is a fulfillment of one of the chairman's goals and the Board of Supervisors goals. One is a response to development in general and how our zoning ordinance looks, reads, feels, and helps spur development within Maricopa County and informs the public of what they can and can't do on their properties. The other one has to do with the housing issue. So if we go to, I've got the clicker. Thank you. I'm like, somebody needs to advance the slide. So, where was I? Okay, with the initiatives from the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors have been very supportive of us through this process. They're very concerned with the housing issues that not only face Maricopa County, they face the state in general. It's something that we see, and we'll have a little bit of a discussion of that as we go through. But before we get there, I want to introduce our team. I'm Tom Ellsworth. I'm the Director of the Planning and Development Department in Maricopa County. Our team is made up of senior staff who's been here for decades, even from the end of the last century. Darren Gerard and Rachel Applegate's not that old, but Rachel Applegate's our planning supervisors. We have Ron Corals and Adam Cannon who are managing our project for us on this side. One of the things we did was we have retained a consulting firm, a professional consulting firm to go out. They have experience in working with multiple municipalities on what are best practices, what is the new format, what are some of the ideas in regulatory reform that are happening across the country, and how can those inform what we might be able to propose here at Maricopa County. An overview of the agenda of what we got today. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time of what the project is, why are we doing it, what we're doing, what we're expecting from it, a little bit of timeline, and then get into a little bit about the regulatory update. I already talked a little bit about key initiatives coming out of the Board of Supervisors and the Chairman's office, but a little bit about what's been going on at the state legislature as well in those discussions over the last couple of years. Then we're going to get into the focus areas. As we've met, there are different focus areas of what's important in a zoning code, what might need to be updated within our zoning code, and we've identified 4 or 5 of those that we're going to discuss today. And what the primary purpose of today is to get feedback from the general public, feedback from you, to be able to take this back and tell people what's going on. There's a questionnaire that we'll have you fill out either today, tomorrow, when you have time. That's going to inform of some of that feedback and the discussion. And then there will be a Q&A session at the end. A little bit of housekeeping. If you're online and you have questions, you can actually start entering those into the chat, but I'm told that if you want to do that, you need to raise your hand online, and then they'll open that chat function up to you. You won't be able to speak, not until the Q&A session. And if we get to that point, somebody has a question online, we'll be able to open it up to you. In the audience, when we get there to the Q&A, we have staff members, Ron's in the back, who will come around and hand the microphone to you. And we're gonna live dangerously today and actually give you the microphone to talk. But we'll get to that section and we'll have some closing remarks. All right, project overview. Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance was first adopted in 1969. It's from the 60s, back when we had rotary phones, and I think they were still using slide rules and abacuses instead of laptops and iPads. So it's about time to be overhauled. If you've ever seen our zoning ordinance, it's very text heavy. It uses old terminologies. It's been modified, kicked around a little bit of an update over the decades. It's led to some inconsistencies, some outdated practices, and some outdated materials. Those are all things that we're wanting to address through this update. Get to my notes just a second. Couple of things is there's some things in there, like I'm going to give a couple of examples. Inconsistent standards. As we've made updates over the years, one of the things we're going to talk a little bit about there, setbacks, and I'm trying to solicit ideas from you on what might be appropriate updates to development standards. But one of the ones that we've already identified is in our rural 43 zoning district. It's for acre single family development. You have a side setback of 30 feet, but then if you're on the street side, it's half the distance of the front, which already that's kind of an outdated way of defining setbacks in and of itself. What you end up is less of a street side setback than a other side setback, which is opposite of what most zoning codes do. So just as an example of one of our inconsistent standards, but throughout there's outdated language. We've got outdated land use designations. There's a designation, I know there's some staff we have tinsmiths as an allowed use in Maricopa County. I don't know what they do or why or where they'd be allowed, but in the industrial district, you can be a tinsmith in Maricopa County. One of the key things is there's a limited flexibility for housing. The zoning, standard zoning over the last few decades designates densities, it designates what types of uses are allowed, what the density is, it sets the setbacks and the development standards. What we found is that in Maricopa County, primarily the majority of Maricopa County is zoned for large lot development. It's large lot development that's been inherited over time throughout the county, including municipal county islands. And so what that does is it creates one type of standard in what the county island is. And so as people, what we found is as people are either aging in place or they have kids who move away, what we hear from them is, my kids can't live in the neighborhood. I've got large lots, homes around me. Where are their options? So part of their options, if you're in the county island, is be look towards the municipalities, what they might have going on. Or are there options that we could look at that would allow flexibility within our zoning code itself? The other thing is, as you read the zoning code and the outdated language, it's very difficult to understand. It's not modernized. It's very text heavy. What we're hoping to do with this update is to introduce land use charts, exhibits, illustrations that will illustrate and show very clearly how you determine your setback. What is your lot coverage? Where can accessory dwelling units go? How do we measure height? How do you measure the height of a building or the height of a house? Is it to the peak of the roof? Is it to the midpoint of the roof? Is it to the parapet height or the plate height on the roof? So what we're hoping to do is have a good conversation today about some of the things we're seeing, try to generate some thoughts and ideas in your minds. And as we go through that, what I'm hoping is what you're going to hear from us are ideas at this point. What we've done is the Board of Supervisors has appointed a task force. There's some of them here today. It's a task force that's already been starting to meet to help us facilitate a discussion. This task force is made up of professionals, professional planners, developers, community members, agency members. It's a very diverse group of people and individuals who can take a look at our zoning ordinance, provide us what they see as best practices, challenges that they see as they utilize our zoning ordinance towards the development, or challenges that they see as they deal with just everyday landowners on what can I do on my property? Why do I need this variance? It's only a 1 foot difference in the lot width. Why do I need to go to a variance? Why does it cost that much? And why does it take 5 months to get a variance? Just for the question on 1 foot. So that's something that we've started having discussions on. So we're very grateful. The board, every member of the Board of Supervisors appointed somebody to that task force, and we're very grateful for their participation and feedback. So again, sorry, I should have advanced the slides, but again, we want to provide clarity to the code. We want to consider modern practices, modernize the format. Right now, on the modernization of the format, for somebody to go in and see what is an allowed use in a zoning ordinance, it actually requires you to flip between chapters. We have chapters that refer to other chapters that then refer to a third chapter. It makes it very confusing. It buries a lot of our land uses. Maricopa County has an incremental zoning code, meaning that land uses build up from rural all the way up to industrial, and it's inclusionary of those uses, most of those uses, as you go up, which is very confusing to people as they're looking at different land uses and what they can do. And again, what we're looking for is the ability to see, and this is something that's happening statewide, it's actually happening nationwide. There's a lot of examples in other municipalities across the country about regulatory reform that puts flexibility into zoning ordinances that allows not necessarily what most people think of as affordable housing, but attainable housing. We're in the middle of our comprehensive plan update right now. And what we're seeing as we go out and we've talked to the community, as we interact with the development community, what we're seeing is that people either feel like they can't afford a house or they can't be able to obtain a house. It's almost a 50-50 split. What we're finding is those people are already in a house and their equity has grown, they're comfortable, but when they want to downsize, there's nowhere to downsize to. What we're also finding is, and this is where my kids are all in their early 20s, they're looking for their first house. They can't find that first house. There's something that's missing. We're going to start talking about a little bit of the housing types, and we want feedback from the community on, is there a way to put the flexibility for housing types in there? There's a term that we're going to talk a little bit about middle housing and what that is, what it looks like. Time frame on this. The challenge we've been given is to have an updated and modernized code by the end of the year. So it's a very aggressive time frame. That's why we've already been meeting as staff. We've done a staff review of the code. We've met with this task force a couple of times already. And now this is our first public stakeholder meeting where we're informing you of what we're doing and how you can be involved and where you can find that information. Today's June 5th. We're going to take the summer. We're going to take feedback that we receive from this meeting and out on the website. I'll give you the website at the end so that you can know where to go to be involved and create a draft. Our hope is to have that draft by August 28th. And then it enters that public period between August 28th and what we're shooting for is a Planning and Zoning Commission hearing on November 6th. So there is plenty of time to review what's going on, what the discussions are. Once that draft's created, being able to review that draft, make comments on it. We're going to put that out online to be able to review what changes we're looking at, what we're keeping, and be able to facilitate discussions and obtain those comments. If, as we go through this, it's a very big lift, I'm going to say that those are our anticipated dates. If it gets a little bit bigger, we might end up adjusting those. Again, be very important to stay online, and we'll keep the community informed. Just like you might have been informed for this meeting, we have our interested groups that we shoot out the email blast to about the stakeholder meetings. This is another stakeholder meeting on August 28th, but we'll be introducing the draft and presenting what the proposals are into that zoning code update. Again, we're shooting for the last Board of Supervisors hearing in December. All right, so this is what our current zoning ordinance already looks like. I've kind of gone through a lot of this with the project overview. As you can see, this is our chapter 5. It begins with our rural zoning, starts at the very base zoning, and it's very text heavy. When you're looking for setbacks, you've got to go through that. That starts out with land use regulations. When you're looking at a modern zoning code, what you see is more like, this. You've got a land use table and a table format where you can clearly see where different land uses are allowed, what different land uses might require a special use permit, what might be some of the situational criteria for different types of land uses. One of those would be distances that might be required for marijuana uses is a big one that's in codes lately. The other thing is that the development standards themselves, when you look at the old code, you have to decipher the text to figure out what your setbacks are. You have to read that text. It's very difficult to pull out exactly what you need to do versus if we have a chart that says, hey, in the rural 190, this is your minimum lot area, your minimum lot widths. It's right there in a chart format. This is what we're hoping to do and add into the code. This is also an example of an exhibit of how a primary dwelling unit should be situated within setbacks and where your accessory dwelling units might, not accessory dwelling, accessory buildings would be permitted on a lot. This is the type of exhibit that comes in very handy when you're trying to discuss with somebody where they can put their shed or their garage or their detached accessory unit. We don't have that ability, and it causes a lot of time consternation. As somebody, either they didn't call us and they submitted for a permit and they misinterpreted the code, or when we're talking to somebody on the phone and trying to describe it and trying to draw a picture, I literally had to hung up on somebody, called them back on a team so I could draw a picture to show them what I was talking about. So this is going to create an ease of use. It's going to increase customer service. These are things that we know that we want to do. What we want feedback from the community is, when the draft comes out, is it readable? Is it something that you can use? Is there a better way to display it that might be more helpful? Well, the other thing we're looking for is streamlining of standards. I already talked about some of the standards. One of the other standards that we're looking at is, as we look at rezoning requests throughout the years, we're looking at height limits. One of the big ones is in our industrial zoning, and I know this in most municipalities, the standard height across the valley has been 40 feet. In most municipalities, the new standard height that everybody's getting an overlay zone requires them to go to the Board of Supervisors, and I see Mr. Gilmore here today, is about 50 to 52 feet. So everybody's needing to request a rezone to go to a height that everybody's developing at today. So what we're trying to look at best practices of what are standard heights. There's a member of the community who's contacted me a few different times, where he's a home builder. He builds private homes. He's not a home builder as one of the big home building companies. He's a private contractor, but he builds custom homes with 9 to 10 foot ceiling heights, and he has a problem fitting that within a 30-foot height limit. So he's like, why can't we go to 35 feet? So that's something that we could talk about. Is there the ability to increase some height limits for certain types of situations? Or is it something that we're seeing standard in the market, that 35 feet versus 30 feet to allow for the higher ceiling heights in Arizona would benefit customers? So again, that's another one of the standards that we want to look at for updating our regulations. So through the regulatory update, one of the things that we want to bring up is the changing political environment. This is an initiative that is driven by the Board of Supervisors and the Chairman's office, particularly into the housing issue, but it's also into regulatory reform. I wanted to spend just a quick second on the landscape of what's going on in the state of Arizona and the legislature itself. Every year for the last 2 or 3 years, or the last few years, there's legislation that's specifically targeting regulatory reform. There's been several bills that have gone out there. Most particularly this year, there were ones that talked about accessory dwelling units, starter homes, missing middles. Last year there was one, what was it? Residential by right. There was yes in God's backyard. All these things that the state is trying to tell the municipalities, you need to do this. What we're trying to do here is say, we're the local jurisdiction. We're taking control of this right now. We hear what they're saying, and we can take care of that inside of our own code. And I think that's what I'm hearing from a lot of the municipalities themselves. So yes, it's not reactionary to what we're seeing. It's just more of, this is one of the reasons that this needs to be done now and today. And so some of the other things that we're talking about is middle housing options. Those middle housing options are those things that you might have typically think of what a starter home would look like today. Typically small lot development. It could be a duplex, a triplex, townhome development. Those are all things that we would call that middle housing. What we find, and in the planning realms, they've called it the missing middle, because most zoning codes don't handle middle housing very well. That's particularly of note in Maricopa County itself. It's very difficult to find places where you can put middle housing options without actually going through the full-blown rezone. So what we're looking for are ideas. If there's anybody out in the audience today, out in the community, that have seen things that have worked in other places, other municipalities, we're interested in those. We've doing a lot of research in what that is. Short-term rentals is another big topic that's out there right now. Short-term rentals as an option for housing. the key thing here is we hear people on short-term rentals is they're wanting us to be able to prohibit short-term rentals in places. State statute clearly says we can't prohibit short-term rentals. But right now, we don't even have a land use category that talks about short-term rentals in our zoning ordinance. So is there a way to bring short-term rentals in, regulate them on the lot without prohibiting them, which would be in opposition to state law? So these are all things that go through our mind that I want everybody to be thinking about as we solicit the input from you. So as we met with our task force, and as we've identified, oh, I don't have a slide that shows that. We've identified 4 or 5 different land use area or focus topic areas. We want to focus in on different areas to guide our discussion. As you go out on our website and you're looking at this, we're going to try to organize our different thoughts and ideas in these areas. First focus areas on use regulations and zoning districts. The zoning code, I'm for just a little bit background on what zoning actually does. So zoning can be a very difficult topic. It's a very specific topic. It's a very technical topic. Zoning does a few things. First thing it does is it tells you specifically what a piece of property can be used for. It's got the designated land use. This is opposed to what you normally see in a general plan or our comprehensive plan or area plans of planned land use. This is the actual entitlement on the land. This is what you can do. If it's not on the list, you can't do it. You're going to need to seek a rezone. The other thing it does is it sets development standards. How can what you do on it, how does it look? How do you build it? How does it create that character for the neighborhood and the zone that it's trying to do? So we're going to talk about development standards. I'll get to that next. But so right now we're looking at what we're trying to include for use regulations is what we want is people to go out and take a look at what are the allowed land uses in each zoning district. Is there anything missing? There's a lot of emerging land uses that didn't exist in the 1960s. Marijuana existed, but marijuana facilities did not. So we've had to update our zoning to allow for those. We have to update it a couple times to allow for changing legislation. But other things that are out there are electronic vehicle charging stations. How does that affect your parking regulations? How does it affect regulations as it relates? Well, that's building code, to the building permits. Get back to where I'm at. Short-term rentals is another one. It does not exist. There's nothing that we regulate on short-term rentals in that zoning ordinance. What the state statute requires is that we treat them like any other single-family home for rent. Food trucks and mobile vendors. I'm looking at food trucks and mobile vendors. That's something over the past few decades has become very popular. Our zoning code doesn't specifically speak to where those are allowed, where they're not allowed as a land use itself. That's something we could look at as we do this update. The ability for live work units. We have home occupation requirements, but do we have any requirements that actually allows the mixture of uses in those units themselves? Does it need to be updated? Are there things that need to be added to there? One of the things is we looked at the use requirements in the county. I know in municipalities, they're either called conditional use permits, council use permits. In Maricopa County, they're special use permits. They're very specific entitlements for a certain type of use that requires a different amount of discretionary scrutiny by the board. There are things that have been identified that we've seen over time that have typically gone to SUPs that typically get approved to reevaluate any SUPs that might be out there that might be able to go to a use by right and eliminate the ability or the requirement for somebody to have to go through a month-long process. These are all things that we're looking for. New and emerging use types, outdated use types that aren't in there, things that might need clarification. So as we go through this, that's the other thing I need, the QR code. There is a survey out there that we've got that goes along with this presentation. So we've got these feeder questions underneath. So if you want to, while we go through this, you could bring that up and you could actually type in those comments of what your thoughts are as we're discussing. I know the way I'm at during one of these types of presentations, I have thoughts, I'm scribbling notes. But if you want to, you can hit this QR code, it'll take you out to the questionnaire and you can actually start answering some of these questions as those thoughts come to you as we might be discussing some of these things. But again, that's the main purpose of this is what is your feedback to us? We have some recommendations, but we're vetting those out still, but we're still trying to hear from the community on what are some of those things that you're feeling. If you live in a single family district, what are some of the things that are concerned to you? If you're in one of our rural districts, are there uses that you see in your rural district that you would like to do, but we require you to get the SUP, or are there some uses you don't understand why we're there? Maybe we need to clarify situational uses for those. Development standards. So this is another big one as we look at flexibility within a zoning ordinance for regulations. The development standards in the statute that are specifically called out for zoning codes have to deal with setbacks. Setbacks are the distance of a building to a property line. It creates your front yards and your side yards. Your building heights, we talked a little about those. Your lot coverages. And your lot coverages is the percentage of your lot that can be covered by a building or a structure. And so as you get your land uses, all this starts setting out where you can build, how you can build, how big you can build, how much you can build. A lot of this plays into how you can actually use your land. So this is always an interesting topic to me, is when you're talking to somebody about their property, it's what can I do? How much can I do? Why can't I do more? But when they're calling about their neighbor's property, it's why can they do that? How could they do that? And how could you possibly allow that much to happen? So zoning is very challenging, is that we try to find that balance of what's acceptable. That's what we're looking for here, is feedback. Our setbacks are set for more of a rural zoning code. Like I said, most of Maricopa County is zoned for rural zoning, very large lot. We have rural 190, which are 190,000 square foot lots, or about 4.5 acres. Lot coverage right now on a rural 190 on almost 5 acres of land is 10%. People who live out on 10%, we run into them all the time. They come in for variances because they're looking to build horse barns, canopies, and they meet that 10% pretty fast with a large barn and horse canopies. Is there a way are there ways to put into the zoning code ways to allow an increase in lot coverage, to allow different types of accessory uses in rural districts? But you then extend that into the single family districts as well. Do our lot coverages, do they coincide with what we see in municipalities? Is there a different way for us in the county to look at lot coverages and setbacks and heights as it relates to maybe urban county islands versus very rural areas? So since I've been here, one of the things I've seen in the rural areas is, why is our lot coverage so small? One of the justifications in the past was, if you start massing a lot of buildings on a piece of property, there is no local fire service out in the middle of the desert. So there was a fire concern. That was the reasons that I've heard of why we have lower lot coverages in those districts. So I'm looking at the lot coverages. It allows you to use more of your property. Setbacks. As we met with the consultants and through our task force, one of the things that brought up is that one of the primary costs of development is the land itself. As you're looking at the use of that land and how you're able to use that more efficiency and be more flexible on that land, in the zoning ordinance allows people more options on their properties. So what we're looking for feedback from you and from the community is, what do our setbacks look like to you? Are there concerns with our setbacks? Are there setbacks that need to be modified? If we were to reduce setbacks in certain areas, what would be the reaction to that? Again, we talked about building heights. Again, we get in the urban areas, would it be appropriate to just allow more building heights and see what happens? Should we build in standards on building heights, that if you're in proximity to this density or this land use, to be able to step back your heights and gradually increase those heights? Those are all different types of tools that allow flexibility and development into a regulation that would allow somebody to develop their property in a manner that would typically get approved through a months-long zoning process. Again, in this area, it's the landscaping requirements and the parking standards. Parking is always a big topic, especially in our employment and commercial area districts and in our multifamily districts, and believe it or not, in the single family districts. Right now, the zoning code requires that you have 2 parking spaces for a single family home. The question has come up is, how necessary is that if you know that you're building a smaller home and there's only going to be 1 car? Do you actually have to have Well, we ran in a past life in planning, we'd have people who were trying to add on to their home. Maybe they enclosed their garage. Where do they fit the 2 parking spaces? They have public parking in the front of their house. Are they able to use that? What methods could we put into the zoning ordinance that might allow flexibility in parking? Parking always is a big issue that takes up a lot of property, especially on employment uses. One of the big ones that we have are data centers and warehouse uses. And it's one of those emerging land uses. The data centers is something that really doesn't exist in zoning codes, especially our zoning code. So we apply a huge zoning standard to a warehouse use that looking at Mr. Gilmore, because I've run through this in 2 municipalities with him, where we're parking it at 1 to 900 square feet for a data center use that employs 20 people. So a massive amount of property would be wasted on asphalt and parking. And the only way to get around it would be to go in front of the legislative body to ask for a rezone. So we're looking at the parking standards. Again, we're asking the question. It's up to you, or not, it's back to you now. When I introduced the project team, I forgot. The other project member that I forgot to introduce was you, everybody, the community. We're trying to involve as many people as we can. You are part of this team. Any comments that we get, it gets brought into the whole of everything that we're looking into. So what are the things that you run into as it relates to parking, setbacks, lot coverages, any of the development standards that you run into? The big key issue, and we've talked a lot about it in the legislative update portion of this, is but the availability, the attainability, and the affordability of housing is something that's a major topic. What are those things that we can do within our current zoning ordinance and the update that might be able to give people options to put an additional unit onto their property as an accessory unit that one of their kids might be able to utilize, rent from them, or what you call an in-laws quarters or a grandmother's suite, those types of multi-generational housing. Right now, our zoning code allows accessory dwelling units in every zoning district. Our zoning code also allows an encroachment of those accessory dwelling units into the side setback. All of that coincides with the recent legislation that was approved with the state. But what the state's also added is the thought of multiple accessory dwelling units. The state put into legislation that you can have one attached and one detached unit. That's not something that is in our zoning ordinance today. So as we're looking at that, that's one of the things. One of the thoughts that pops in is if you're already allowed one accessory dwelling unit, one attached, one detached, how much different is that to just go ahead and say duplexes? This is very big and it's very out there. Would duplexes just go ahead then be a use by right in a single family district? You'd call it a single family attached unit, but if you're already allowing the ADU, could you just go ahead and find a mechanism to just go ahead and allow that extra unit on the same lot? So that's something that's an idea out there. So this, again, we're asking you, what are some of those zoning strategies that you all may have heard of? We want to hear from you. If there's any questions or feedback, we'd love to hear them. Again, we're going to take the summer and take a look at the new format of our zoning ordinance and any proposed regulatory reform in regards to that proposed to you back at the end of August. Permitting administrative procedures. So first, the zoning code tells you what you can do, and then it tells you how you can build it on your lot. And the third one is how do you get approval to do that? That's what this is. So, like again, if it's a use that's not allowed by right, you're into the Planning and Zoning Commission, and you're into the Board of Supervisors for either special use permit, a rezoning, a zoning overlay to allow what you want to do. What uses are there? Variances. This one comes up a lot where we're at the Board of Adjustment, and it's the example I brought before where somebody's in there for a variance because they're adding on, or they're trying to build a house. Somebody split the lot decades ago, and instead of being 150 feet wide, it is now 148 feet wide, and therefore they don't meet the zoning. They're in there for a 2-foot zoning. There is no mechanism inside of the zoning ordinance to allow for what I call an ish factor, for the ability for at a staff level or an administrative level to say, we're talking about 2 feet, we're looking at the surrounding areas and being able to have an administrative determination to allow that permit to go through without the need to go through a months-long expensive process through a board. So that's one of the thoughts that we're kicking around. What are ways to do that? Looking for feedback on public notification. This is not much. There's not much different here, but what we're really interested in is hearing feedback on what are the methods out there that are most effective for public notification. What are the ways that most people are getting public notifications that they appreciate? Is the mailer still the best way to do it? Is it the posting of the sign? State law typically allows the ability to do one or the other, or the posting in the newspaper, which most people now get online. So we're looking for feedback on what is the most effective way. We still have to stay within the parameters of the state statute, but we want to make sure that we are doing that. Are our current requirements overdoing it? And that's another thing that we've heard is you require too much notification. So depending on who you ask, that's a discussion that we could have with this. Clarity of process. As it comes through the process, when you go through our existing zoning ordinance, it starts in the administrative sections. It starts discussing what needs to go to the board. How do you get a military compatibility permit? How do you do this? What is this step? It gets very jumbled, and it's interchangeable through the chapters. We need to streamline those, make them very understandable, very, very, I'm going to say followable, able to be followed through the code. And it's something that we're looking at, streamline those. Are there processes that we might be able to combine, or actually that are outdated that we might not need to do anymore? Those are also things we're trying to identify. Again, we're looking for the feedback. All of this makes it more efficient, makes it more customer friendly, more user friendly. It allows the general public to be more informed of what's going on. Again, and then the final thing that a zoning code could do is it's the quality of life consideration. So with all of these updates, the overarching question is, if we modify this setback here versus there, what is the effect on the look, feel, character of, how does it affect that neighborhood? Are there buffers, transitions that we need to consider? If we're going to increase height in certain locations, are there considerations we might need to, I'll throw out some of the, if you're going to put a commercial development next to a single family home, is there a requirement for a buffer? If you're going to allow an increased height on a property, this is where that would fit into. Would you allow that height to set back as somebody steps farther away from that? If you can allow those by right, you avoid the need for things like variances and rezonings. So those are all things we're looking for feedback on as well. Is there a way that we treat different types of uses depending on what's happening? In Maricopa County, in the unincorporated sections, if you're looking at for increases of availability and flexibility of housing, and it's important that you have availability of public infrastructure, namely water and sewer, can we allow different flexibility if you're in that urban area and you have access to those? So when you're looking at quality of life issues, and as we're out there, and as we listen to people in zoning cases today, and as we talk to people who are on building permits or coming in on variances, primary question is it compatible with or detrimental to the community around you? This is where that question gets asked. And it's a question that we want to ask as we talk with you about different options in the zoning ordinance. We need to keep this part in mind, is are we continuing that quality of life? So with that, we've ended up at the Q&A section. I thought I had a slide about with the website. Is it still on there? I'll come back to that later. So on the Q&A session, this is where I'm going to open up to anybody here in the audience. Here's a list of the questions that popped up on the slides as I went through them. They're primer questions, just to refresh your memory of some of the things I might have talked about. So at this point, if you're online and you raise your hand, we can take your question there. If you're in the audience, just raise your hand and I can call on you here. I'm very interested in any thoughts, feedback, anything that's on your minds related to anything we discussed today. All right, anybody online? All right, that means I did really good. Jack. Oh, hang on, Jackson. Okay, we'll get to, him right after Jack.
Oh, thank you. Jack Gilmore, Gilmore Planning and
I think you're on.
Architecture. Short list. First of all, there is no landscape ordinance in the current zoning ordinance. So I think the county should adopt a landscape ordinance that creates some kind of minimum criteria for urban forest. So that's my first one. Building heights. I appreciate everything you said and agree 100% on building heights for the industrial. A lot of the cities in the valley are using higher building standards, and I think that's kind of automatic anymore, that the building heights are jumping to 56 feet. I'm working on several of those right now. So the higher, the better, or to give that kind of flexibility, but I think the added setback is also an important feature of that.
Jack, on that one, when you get to the 56, are the cities asking for a greater setback than what's typical?
No, not necessarily. They've got their minimum, but by the time you deal with either truck docks and or the added retention requirements for these larger buildings, then almost by default, those buildings are moving further away from the street. So that's in effect good, but I think there needs to be some minimum standards. And going to the building height to reflect some kind of a ratio, I think, is a good way to do that. Also in the industrial, City of Phoenix has adopted an ordinance called the Commerce Park. The Commerce Park is different than the A1 and the others because it requires a higher development standards, more generous setbacks around its perimeter, higher landscape criteria. And I think that would be an important feature that I'd like to see hopefully worked into maybe the I-1 or I-2 that allows some commercial uses as well, because it doesn't exist right now.
So are you recommending a new zoning district or to allow Commerce Park as a land use with development standards inside the I-2 already?
Yeah, I think that's open for discussion, but I'd like the Commerce Park because it is flexible in terms of allowing some commercial uses, support commercial for those larger industrial parks. So I think that's a nice feature. Parking standards, you mentioned that. We're finding these bigger buildings are going to a much smaller parking ratio. So I think you're already considering that. So I think that's a good thing to consider. And dealing with some current problems right now, this is maybe not related, but it's kind of related. On some cases right now where we're dealing with McDOT giving reviews and planning department giving reviews, there's a question as to who makes the final decision. Who trumps who? So that's maybe a separate discussion.
Administration section in our process. All right.
So that's it. That's my list right now. I'm looking forward to having a chance to review the draft of this and be glad to provide some comments.
Forward to your comments. We had somebody online, Mr. Utton, Ty Utton.
Yeah, I have Ty unmuted. There you go, Ty. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I just want to, say thank you. This is very helpful, and I'm glad you guys aren't rushing through this process. I guess my question is probably a little premature, but I just wanted to understand your guys' thoughts around energy development. You know, we've had a couple projects that, you know, aren't included in the zoning ordinance, obviously, like you alluded to. Are you planning on updating your solar and BESS districts and guidelines around that?
That's a good comment. That would be one of those emerging land uses that didn't exist decades ago that is today. BESS is a big one right now, battery energy storage systems and the large solar. Right now we fit the large utility solar under the industrial category. And then the BESS systems, we've been working out development standards that we recommend, but they're not codified yet. So yeah, that's a very good thing to bring up. All right, anybody else? All right.
Hi, thank you. Hi, yeah, my name is Trevor, and I'm a resident. So there's a lot of questions there, but in general, like I think that it's all, you know, pointing in the right direction of kind of loosening the standards and allowing for more flexibility. County islands have kind of historically in general in the United States been less highly regulated than the urban areas, and that's been very good for allowing for more affordable homes, mostly single family, but you know, a lot of times in general, what the landowner or what the developer thinks is kind of best for their individual needs or the community, which is really good. So things like reducing setbacks and reducing lot sizes, which, you know, increase the land cost of a development and can drive prices up considerably. Those are all good. Parking requirements is kind of the same thing on the multifamily side, which maybe is not necessarily as relevant here, but you know, those districts still exist, and if anyone is utilizing them, and they might find that the parking requirements don't necessarily fit the project that they have, and they need that flexibility. So reducing those requirements can be very beneficial for allowing for more housing to be developed on a given parcel. Not sure if there's anything else there. You mentioned food trucks. I think I don't know if the answer is to be silent or to include something there, but in general, like having those people being able to operate their business, you know, that's someone's income. Sometimes you're heading out on the highway and you see a nice little fry bread stand and can get some food. And I think that we all really kind of appreciate that, like, human scale type of business that kind of makes this country really great. And so I don't know if the answer is to explicitly protect that or to just remain silent on it and kind of let people do their thing, but anything that allows people to, like, continue to make their income, I think is really great. And so I appreciate that the county is looking at this, and I hope that that's the direction that they'll go in. So thanks.
Thank you for the feedback. That was great. Barbara Wiley. Then I'll come back to Mr. Swanson. Barbara Wiley.
Barbara's got her hand raised. I tried to chat with her. She didn't respond, but I do. There you go, Barbara. You're good. Go ahead.
Now my microphone's off. Okay, I haven't done anything for a long time, but unless things have changed, is there timelines on from when you submit plans until the different departments approve them, including not limited to flood control?
Is your question towards permitting or for zoning applications?
Zoning.
Okay, for zoning applications. That is something that we could look at committing to right now. We do have turnaround times per the state statute. We don't have them. What we strive for is if you apply today, Darren, can you remind me what's our turnaround time typically right now for comments to TAC?
Few comments. First initial review is turned around in 3 weeks.
Okay.
And resubmittals in 2 to 3 weeks.
All right. So we right now we strive for that. It's not in the code. It's something that we could look at to make sure.
But you have control.
Okay, so I don't know if you heard that. Apparently we're very quick. So yes, but we could look, one of the things we're looking at, and it goes back into the administrative section, is how do we streamline our processes, make them more efficient, more straightforward. If there's anything in the language in the code that would allow us to be flexible to that towards the advantage of the customer, is something that we're always looking to do.
Well, there were so many different departments you have to get approval from too. I mean, and it's like they drag their feet, somebody else. It takes months, a year. It's crazy. It was crazy. Maybe it has improved. Let's see, there was another thing. Don't remember what it was. There's another question. I'll think of it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If you think of it, but after you're done, we're gonna give contact information for this website, and then there's staff available that we're gonna have you direct contact to. So don't worry if you think of it later. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you can email us in the middle of the night. We won't answer it till the morning, but you can do that. All right.
Well, first off, thank you, Tom, for letting us come down. I'm looking forward to seeing what the end product is, and I think selfishly, it's hopefully we can steal some things from you guys. So I hope you have a lot of success with this. I think a couple of things. One, I want to point out that you guys are fast. You're not faster than us. We do it a little bit quicker for our initial turnaround times. But I figure I'll tease you a little bit. Queen Creek. Now we try to get our comments out within 10 days. But a couple of things that you may want to think about, and I apologize, I'm not hugely familiar with your code, but one of the things that we've found pretty successful and helpful is that within our code, we have the provision that the planning administrator can grant a 10% deviation to any development standard. It's not always used, but I think in your presentation, you kind of kicked off with industrial building heights. We have a similar height at 48 feet. We've had developers come in and say, hey, we really need 52 feet. Well, boom, there's the 10%, you got your 52 feet. We sometimes do it with setbacks. We sometimes do it with parking and things like that. It's not widely used, and it is certainly at the discretion of the planning administrator as to what applies to it. But that is a tool that's been pretty helpful. I think the other thing that all developments, particularly commercial and industrial ones, deal with is the overabundance of parking. And so we're in that unique situation in Queen Creek where we obviously have our zoning. We also have to deal with Pinal County and then also Maricopa County. And we'll often get developments that were either approved in Pinal and not yet developed, approved in the county, not yet developed. And each one of those have different parking standards. And so one of the things that we try to do is allow for deviations. I wouldn't necessarily call it a variance, but administrative review of parking standards. And so let's say it's a commercial development and they're by code required to have 400 stalls. Pinal County might require 600, and they may want 350. And so we'll say, okay, give us a parking study, let us evaluate that. We can move forward with this parking study because you've shown us your demand. And then in the event that we need to have additional parking because it's just going hog wild, we have that built into that administrative approval for that parking waiver. So those are a couple of things that I think may be helpful if you don't have them already to give some thought to. I think one of the things that our council has really driven staff to pursue is streamlining the review process. And so I know the legislature is working on it, admin approvals, but now currently in practice, we administratively approve all site plans, all preliminary plats, all final plats. And the idea there is really, so long as it's not seeking a deviation from the code and a setback or development standard, staff knows what they're doing. They know how to read the code and they know how to apply the code. And that has really been helpful, I think, to the development community to just get out of that 6 to 9 month review process. It still goes through the typical 3 to 4 months as you do permits and reviews and things like that. But that has been something that we've received a lot of positive feedback on as well. I could talk to setbacks, but I think I'll try to turn this over to somebody else to talk.
Thank you very much. Yeah, in my research on what's been going on around the country, Queen Creek's regulatory reform, some of those had popped up. So thank you for your feedback. Wendy.
As you know, I don't often need a large meeting to make my opinions known to you. So I echo everything you say. I think the 10% is a really great idea that has come in handy in a couple different situations that we've dealt with. I would say one of the biggest things we do struggle with the county, and that's not in the ordinance, but something to think about as you're trying to make things better, is there's a lot of silos. And I think you heard that from the speaker between McDOT, between flood, environmental services, like there's just a lot of silos. And I think anything you can do to improve the communication up front between those different departments is going to dramatically help your process.
Barbara, we can go back to you. I feel like Oprah. Barbara Wiley. All right.
All right, now you can hear me.
Yes, now we can.
Okay, the other thing that I was thinking is I have been down there at the legislature the last 3 years, on and off. Not something I want to do, but a lot of the bills that have gone through have not included the county. It's usually just municipalities.
Yes, that's correct. So yeah, that we exist under two different titles on state statute. What we typically do is we watch what goes on in Title IX for municipalities, because typically it comes around to the county in the next cycle. So we're constantly looking at those. The ADU bill we were talking about, that's one of those ones that cycled around to the counties from the municipalities. And so we always keep our temperature on those. But you are correct. There are things that apply in the county that do not apply in the municipalities. We're two different jurisdictional entities.
Right, and then you've got all these county islands. And I mean, when they were talking about the houses, like the mother-in-law setups that you can put on, I mean, there's no limit when you're in a county island and you've got an acre. I mean, it's just doesn't make sense. So yeah, there's got to be coordination between the whole thing.
Yeah, so I think that's what they're trying to do right now. The limit is one per. If you have a 1 acre lot in Maricopa County today, you only have the ability to have one ADU.
Where's that at? That's a county law?
Yeah, in the zoning code.
Oh.
But what the state is saying is they're giving the ability to have 2 ADUs with the option for a third if it's affordable. That's what the state's doing. The state is actually adding. So that's something we're watching. Right now, it's required in the cities. It's approved. Oh, it's approved in the counties, so it did get approved.
And then that contributes to the affordable housing, supposedly.
So what I'm hearing your concern is multiple units. So this is where the discussion towards the development standards on the lot is looking at how that is affected. So the lot coverage and the setbacks, how does that look and feel on the lot? You've got an acre lot. If somebody is allowed to build a 3,000 square foot home and say a 1,000 square foot barn, is it really adding more intensity to that piece of property just to allow somebody to live in that barn? So that's kind of what the question is can you handle the character discussion I think I'm hearing you ask through a manipulation of the development standards to ease that concern? That's what we're looking to try to balance.
Yeah, yes, and yeah.
So thank you for the comments. Very good.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Eileen Baden.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great presentation. Thank you so much. I wasn't sure if you're able to post a video online, but I do think that would be helpful for folks. One of the things I have a couple thoughts I just thought I'd share around new developments that are being built, and I'm not sure how often we have large developments going in the unincorporated county, but perimeter paths outside, because sometimes we have these gated communities. So just to make sure we're not blocking connectivity, perimeter paths can also help with improving firefighter access and serving as fire breaks. So just want to make sure we're protecting public access to mountains, rivers, and natural areas, and then as well protecting the folks in those communities, helping with firefighter access. So perimeter paths and things along those lines outside of gated communities to make sure we're, not blocking connectivity for folks, especially as e-bikes become more common, and I see people using them all over the place now. Just something to consider as it's, as it may come up in the code. Recently, there was a project in New River and the posting at the site was only for 15 days. So when I saw it, it said to be determined. And then by the next time I looked, the meeting had already been held. So I've become really accustomed to 30 days public postings for any kind of like federal projects that happened. And I really do feel like 30 days is more suitable for the public to really have an opportunity to see and understand what's going on, communicate that with other folks in the neighborhood, because these projects that are built will be lasting in our communities for a long period of time. So that's a request to extend that from 15 to 30 days. The digital billboards, I think I heard that Supervisor Gates didn't want to see them north of the 101 and the 17, but I don't know if that's written down anywhere. So with digital billboards, something to consider, where do we want them? Where do we not want them? I don't know if a dark skies ordinance something like that could be possible that could then help better guide, you know, keeping those digital billboards in areas that are already well lighted. The notification groups. So when we get the notifications, and I know that those notifications go to like Maricopa Association of Governments as well, it would be amazing to have a map and the major cross streets of where the project is, because if not, I have to go into, you know, where exactly is this project? And so if other folks at the county, so for example, like I know Maricopa County Parks needs a park planner to review these development proposals, at, you know, for them to review it adequately, to be able efficiently to have a map to show, okay, where is this project site in that email, I think would be really helpful for folks. And I would like to see if individuals could sign up for that contact list, not just organizations. I found where folks have to find an organization to kind of get involved and sign up for that contact list. I agree with Mr. Gilmore about the landscape ordinance. I think that that's a great idea, especially as, you know, like there's a new development coming in between Anthem and New River, and we, it's now within Phoenix, but some of it was Maricopa County. And again, we're gonna have high density apartments there. Want to make sure the people who live there have shade on the sidewalks and things like that. But I'm definitely supportive of the middle housing and variety of housing. Also, I just want to be cognizant of the development on mountains. And so I know there's a 15%, usually you have to get a variance if you want to build over 15% slope. I do want to mention, I heard from mountain bikers that they don't like to mountain bike over 15% slope. So in some areas, we actually really want to look at decreasing that, or just something to be aware of, to, you know, possibly not to allow certain variances in some locations. And also to potentially add some requirements associated with scenic corridors. At a recent public meeting with Maricopa County up in Anthem about projects in New River, a lot of the community members wanted the design guidelines to be design requirements. So those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aileen. Those were all good comments. Thank you for your feedback.
I have John Hogan next. John,
right,
needs
John
to
Hogan.
he needs to unmute his mic on his computer, and then there you go, John.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm John Hogan. I'm a resident of Maricopa County, and I just have a concern on the reducing setbacks. The main reason I say that is mainly between lots, because I was in another state once, I won't name it, and I saw a development where the houses were on the lots. They were individual lots, and the individual houses were so close, I could sit in my breakfast nook and pass the butter to my neighbor, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
And so I'm concerned that the setbacks might be, that they not be set too small. Okay, and that's my main concern.
That's the exact feedback we're looking for. Is some of our setbacks are very wide. How far is too not wide enough? What allows flexibility without changing that character like what you're talking about? So thank you for the feedback. That's great.
I have Jane Pfeiffer. Go
Hi,
ahead, Jane.
thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I joined the meeting late, so I apologize if some of my questions have already been addressed. So I actually live in Tonopah, and I have been involved with several groups out here. And the one thing I keep hearing and have experienced myself as well is that the zoning ordinance overall is really clunky and chunky and burdensome, and you have to be a planner or a skilled legal mind in order to weed your way through it all. It's not individual user friendly, and which is fine for large developments that are coming in where they have staff for that, and for folks that are planning subdivisions and they have, you know, lots of experience doing that. But at the end of the day, property owners, individuals that own plots of land, lots of land, should be able to navigate as well.
So
Like, I shouldn't have to hire an attorney to put up a fence.
yeah, what's interesting, I was prepping for this on my, there was a quote that was almost exactly like that I was going to put in my talk. But I backed up. The very beginning of the project where we talked about the objectives of the update is exactly what you just said. That our current zoning ordinance requires you to hire a land use attorney sometimes to figure out what the heck you're supposed to do or you can do. So the major objective is to modernize that format, make it more user-friendly, input, let me back up one more, input more charts and graphs, everything that will make it more easy for you to discern what it is you can and are allowed to do on your site. So good feedback, and it's exactly the objective of what we're trying to do here.
Additionally, I would like to add that out here in the super rural areas such as Tonopah, and it's a little different in the county islands and in areas that neighbor up against closely to up and coming and developing communities that will expand over time. But like, so for example, I am currently zoned RU43, so 1 house per acre, but my lot is 20 acres. I don't fit into the bigger categories, but I don't really fit into the smaller one either. So there, I would like to see, if possible, some flexibility for properties that have unique situations, or at least some way for there to be a discussion with folks in planning and development for properties that are not quite typical inside the zoning districts.
All right, thank you. Yeah, flexibility is also one of our objectives, and that's something we spent on the first few slides. So I don't know what time you came in, but flexibility, especially for unusual situations, is something we're looking forward to, so that we don't have to put you through a public hearing process every time for unique situations. Thank you for your feedback.
Tom, if I could maybe approach it from a municipality standpoint, obviously Maricopa is huge, and you guys can't necessarily keep your eyes on all things going on or focused on all developments. Obviously, they come through your process. I will compliment you that your department and your team is very good to work with, and I feel like our jurisdictions work well together. And so when you have projects that are in the county that are within our boundaries, you obviously send those our way. If possible, I'd like you to consider maybe some language being added when developments come into a municipality or come into a county island within a municipality, that there's some consideration to general compliance or some sort of consistency with what that municipality's design guidelines are. And so here's kind of a general example. We had one county project come in. It was down on Riggs Road. It was a county island. Directly across the street was the town's jurisdiction, and it was for commercial development. And we received the application. We provided comments, and in those comments, we obviously have greater setbacks and some landscaping requirements. But some of the things that we provided comments were accessibility, ingress, egress, how far it's from the intersection, and things like that. We provided those comments back, and I think it went through that public hearing process, and I think it got to the Board of Supervisors, where they then took some of those comments and said, oh, you know what, these actually make sense. Go ahead, we'll approve it, just apply these things to it. And so if there's an ability to have some sort of working together on those projects, I'm not suggesting that you guys say any development that's in a county island within the boundary of Queen Creek needs to follow those guidelines, but something along the lines that gives that potential property owner or developer the thought process that, oh, hey, I should probably reach out to that municipality, or the land planner reach out to that municipality and say, hey, what are your guys' regulations? What are you comfortable with or not comfortable with? And let us work back and forth on those types of things. I think that would go pretty far with some of our council and planning commission. I assure you, I do not like writing letters of opposition to any of your zoning applications, but I've had to do it in the past. And so I think that might be a way to help kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Right. I know we're looking at that. A policy is easier on the policy on the comprehensive plan. Codify it, we'd have to figure it out, but good comment. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? All right. But I'm going to cut that short. Q&A section this way. Okay. So here's the same QR code I threw up before. This takes you out to the community survey, or the survey that goes along with a lot of the discussion we had today. If you have any thoughts, go out there. There's a place to do that. There's also a place for you to just throw out your mind on whatever subject you want. We're going to have that QR code open until July 16th, but the website will be open throughout the remainder of the project. So if this website will have, what we're anticipating is when we get the new format, we'll be able to throw the new drafts out there. You'll be able to peruse the new language, give us direct comments on that language. We're going to try to make it very easy for people to see what's existing code versus what's additional, to make it easier for you to see, hey, so that you don't spend your time commenting on something that isn't new language, but is old language, so that we can verify what it is that we're looking at. One of the other things, I know Eileen brought up a couple of things pertaining to lighting and signage. There are some hot button items that might take longer. So we might put those on a shelf and continue those as text amendments that are very specific to that section of the code. Lighting is one of those ones where we can have debates on that for months. If there are small tweaks to that part of the ordinance, we might do that. But I'm not anticipating us overhauling lighting on this one, because that brings out a whole nother discussion. But as we've gone through this, we're listening to everything you say. If it's not in this code update, our primary purpose on this one is to get that new format, get it modernized, get it more user-friendly. And right now we're focusing on that flexibility aspect, but everything else is going on to the list of things that we will be following up on for sure within the next year. So encourage everybody to go out there, continue to do that. What's next? Next time we send out a meeting like this, we will be meeting to go over that new format. Like I said, interaction with us. You can interact with us any day, every day. Go through that website, give us a call. We're happy to discuss this with you. But we're anticipating come back through this workshop format. Hopefully by August 28th, we will have that draft ready, and we will be discussing the modifications and changes. After that workshop, it's still out there in the public because we're going through that public hearing process. We will make tweaks to that based on feedback we receive on this. We're trying to get to the P&Z Commission in November for a possible hearing on the board for the supervisors in December. So that's our time frame right now. Again, it's depending on the feedback we're getting and where the direction is going. But that's our anticipated dates. So thank you for coming. Thank you for your participation. We're very excited about partnering with everybody on coming up with regulations that are effective, that can keep Maricopa County one of the best places to be, develop, and live. So thank you very much.